of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leitch. It is Wednesday, and on Wednesday we put a focus on the many wonderful things that the Law Enforcement Against Prohibition organization has done. And we have a former member as a guest today who happens to be a founding member of that organization, chatting with my joint host and I. Don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint in the Big Joint broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world pack their bongs, their pipes, their vaporizers, and, of course, twist up a joint to enjoy time for hemp. My joint host today is, as always on Wednesdays, Judge Lenny Frieling. Good morning, Your Honor.
Casper, a pleasure as always. I think that I will probably pass on the vaporizer. I'm at the State Bar Association Legal Education office in the middle of school. I'm teaching this afternoon. I'm studying this morning, but I don't think they would think it was cute if I were vaping in their hallway. So I think I'll have to pass on that.
You'll have
today.
to pass on that and take care of that when you get home this evening. That's called being responsible, a responsible user, which we do encourage. On everything you do, because it ain't nobody's business what you do. And that is why we need to end prohibition on all drugs. Isn't that right, Lenny?
It is, and we are thrilled, we are pleased to have with us today our friend, our colleague, Peter Christ. Peter, how does it feel to be on the other end of the microphone on Time for Hemp?
Well, it's good. You know, I started out here, so it's
you in fact were in my seat for how long?
Yeah, about 4.5 years, I think, almost 5 years that we did it together, and it was interesting. It was always fun, and the main thing was it was Leap Day, so I always tried to keep the discussion on the policy and not on the drugs. So I hope that has been continuing for the past year, because that is Leap's issue. We are. I found very early on in this stuff, after I retired back in '89 and I got into this, that if you start arguing the drugs are good or bad, that it's kind of a tough argument. You get people on either side. If you give the other opponent, drugs are terrible, don't use any of them, everything's terrible, but let's talk about the policy that we are using to deal with this problem, then you can't lose. Because this policy is hopeless. I mean, it's never worked in the history of our species, and it never will. And again, as I've always said, this isn't just about the drugs. What I'm talking about, and when we started this organization of LEAP, and we named it Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, we didn't call it prohibition of drugs or marijuana. We called it just prohibition. And when I came up with that name, the way I interpreted that word to mean was prohibiting consensual adult behavior. And I see that as, and this might be a little strange twist here, but I see those laws at the root of racism and sexism and all those other kind of problems that we have in this society. And the reason I say that goes back to alcohol prohibition. And a lot of people, why did we do that? Why did we in this free country, think that we could prohibit alcohol? And I always twist the story a little bit, because in my reading of the history, that started with a movement that started in this country in the late 1800s, and it was called the Protestant Reformation. And it was a big resurgency of Protestantism in America. They were having tent meetings all over the country, and some of the most well-known speakers of that period are pastors from Protestants. And there was two groups of people those Protestants did not like. One of those groups was called Catholics, and the other one was called Jews.
I was going to say Jews have to be on the list. Nobody ever likes them.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And pouring in through Ellis Island at the beginning of the 20th century were a whole lot of Italian and Irish Catholics and Jews from Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And this is America. No matter how much those Protestants didn't like those Catholics and Jews, you couldn't make a law against them. I mean, that would be just against the Constitution. But how about this? How about we make a law against their drug of choice? And that was determined by the Protestants to be alcohol. And that was what was at the root of us starting alcohol prohibition. Now, just to give you a quick little historical note, my mother and father were both born in 1904. I was a real shock in 46 when I was born, and they were 42. I remember my mother telling me she used to read in the Buffalo newspaper. I'm not talking about a special paper. I mean just the Buffalo regular newspaper. In the want ad section, there would be help wanted for men, and then there would be man needed to do this work. And the last line of the ad would say, Catholics need not apply. That's how prevalent that prejudice was. And then let's look at alcohol prohibition, and let's look at who were the gangsters and thugs of that era. My, isn't it strange? Italian, Irish, and Jews. And the reason isn't because there's something genetically wrong with those people. It's because they couldn't get jobs in the regular marketplace, and the only place they could make a living was this illegal market that even Protestants would buy from. And that was the basis behind this. And now we look at the racism in our current drug war, and we see the same replication. When you have law enforcement in a free society, the only laws they should be enforcing are laws that protect people from other people violating their rights. Victim crimes. They should never be in a free society morality policing victimless crimes, crimes against consensual adult activity. This is activity that we may find a need to regulate, but as soon as you prohibit it, you lose all your ability to regulate it, and it goes on, and if there's money involved in it, it adds violence to society. Did I say too much?
I'm just hoping you'll keep rolling.
Well, that's been my issue. And that's, in fact, one of the reasons why after 26 years that I have resigned from the board and I'm pulling back from this stuff, a little bit of his frustration, because I see us replicating what we did in 1920. There was a movement that started in this country in the 1830s called the Women's Rights Movement. And the people that started that movement, by the way, I'm a studier of movements. I have been since I've been a teenager. The women's rights movement was about full equality for women. That's what they started the movement about. Then about the late 1890s, the movement started turning into a right to vote movement. And all of a sudden, right to vote became their main issue. And by 1815, 1816, they had pushed Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony pretty much out of the issue, because Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony wouldn't just talk about the right to vote. They would talk about full equality for women. And they were finding out that when they went to the all-male Rotary Club in 1917 to convince those men to give women the right to vote, somebody in the Rotary Club would stand up and say, "Aren't you talking about full equality for women?" And then the right to vote people would say, "Oh, no, we're just talking about we're just talking about the right to vote here. We're not, that's another issue." And look what happened. Women got the right to vote in 1920, and the women's rights movement went in the toilet until the mid-1960s before we started talking about full equality for women again. And that's what kind of scares me with the marijuana movement now. And here's my prediction. We're going to get marijuana moved off of Schedule 1, which means it'll be legalized. We'll still argue about regulation, but it'll be legal, okay? And when that happens, The next DPA meeting, roughly half the people that were at the last one aren't going to be there because they got their weed. And then when we try to talk about this primary issue of prohibition, we're going to have people tell us, well, what do you mean? We legalize marijuana. What's the problem? And then after about 3 or 4 years, we're going to start hearing this. Wait a minute. We legalized marijuana. You said that the violence would end and everything, but we still got the gangs. And then we're going to have to get back to the discussion again on prohibition for another 10 years or so. So there is a little bit of frustration in my pulling back.
Well, I have to say, as much as I am conscious of the difference between legalizing pot and what LEAP is working towards, and my wife, who has heard me say these same things a lot, said yesterday, and I still don't really know what to make of this. She said, well, why is LEAP still needed in Colorado now? Meaning we've legalized pot. I said, Debbie, how have I failed to communicate so badly over so many years now? And I have to re-examine my own messaging. I was incredulous.
Yeah. I know. I've been trying to bang this drum for a long time, but the problem with group, let me tell you something that hangs above my computer on the wall. And it's from a guy you may have heard of. His name is Thomas Jefferson. And when
I've heard of him.
When I read it the first time, I'm going to change one word in this thing from him. And then at the end, I will tell you the word that I changed. It says, I never submitted the whole system of my opinions to the creed of any group of men whatever. In religion, in philosophy, in politics, or in anything else where I was capable of thinking for myself. Such an addiction is the last degradation of a free and moral agent. If I could not go to heaven but with a group, I would not go there at all. Well, the word I changed is he used the word party, I used the word group, but it means the same thing. And that's been a quote that's been in my life since I've been a teenager. And that's why I'm the person I am, because I don't desire or require other people's approval of who I am. I'm happy as long as I know that I can look in the mirror and say I'm being straight and I'm being honest. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm happy with who I am. I don't need other people to approve me. And if I have to go be a part of a group to go to heaven, I don't want to go there at all. Because groups become... I find our species, and I mean this sincerely, individually, infinitely interesting. I have never met an uninteresting human being. Now, don't misunderstand me. I haven't liked everybody I've met. I've met some people I haven't liked at all, okay? But even the ones I haven't liked have been interesting. And the reason that they're all interesting is because they're all different than everybody else. I have never met two people exactly the same. And that thing is what makes them interesting. And when you become part of any group, I don't care what it is, my marriage is a group, you have to sacrifice a little part of yourself to be part of the group. And a lot of times that part you sacrifice is that part that made you interesting in the first place. So I don't have a lot of patience with groups. Don't misunderstand me. I'm one of the founders of a group. I understand the importance of groups in making changes in society. I don't neglect that. I understand that. But I don't like to be part of that play. I like to play my game, my hand. And I like to know when to fold them, know when to hold them, know when to get up and walk away and know when to run, to put it easy. And my time in this is just done. I've said everything I think I wanted to say in this movement. I still obviously have more, but the frustration of the whole marijuana issue, you got to understand, and I finally outed myself because they did a little going away thing for me at the DPA conference. And I always tell this story, and I'm sure this has happened to you too, Lenny. You'll be at a college presentation someplace, and when you get done with the presentation, you get an invite back to the dorm. And I always say the same thing, no, that's okay, thanks, I'll go back to the hotel. And then they would look at me sometimes and say, "Oh, don't you smoke?" And my answer was, whether I smoke or not is none of your business. But Leap doesn't. And today I am not here as Peter Christ. I am here as Leap. So thank you very much for the offer. And I'm going back to my hotel. And then I ended that when I said that at the last parting, just to make it perfectly clear to everybody, I have been a pothead for the past 40 years. Okay? So I don't mind outing myself now because I'm not on the board of Leap, and that's who I am, and that's the kind of person I am. I smoked almost throughout my whole career on the police department, okay? It is not that marijuana is not my drug of choice. It definitely is, but it has never been my issue. My issue has been only one thing, and that is liberty. And just in case we don't have this recorded, I want to do it now. My definition of liberty is the right to be as stupid as you choose to be, as long as you do not harm another person or another person's property. Now, when I say that to people in person, I always see a little smile pop up on their face because they think I'm making a joke. And I am not. I am dead serious, and I'll tell you why. There is a phenomenon that I have noticed throughout the history of our species that I have called stupid, crazy genius. And this is the way it plays out in real life. Lenny, you and I grew up in the same town. We went to school together. I got out of high school. I went off to a college someplace. I've been gone for 20 years. I come back for a visit. I run into you. We start talking. And I ask you, gee, how's our friend Tom doing? And you say to me, oh, man, Tom, we thought he was smart. I'm telling you, he's stupid. He's wasted the last 2 years of his life over on top of the hill over there. And are you ready for this? He thinks he's going to catch light inside a glass ball and light the world. I mean, how stupid could you be? 2 years later, I'm back in town again, and I run into you, and we're talking. I say, hey, what's Tom up to? And you tell me, oh, Tom, he's crazy. 4 years of his life now he's wasted on this stupid lighting the ball thing. A year later, I'm back in town, and before I even see you, I hear you yelling, Pete, Pete. And you come running up to me, and you say, did you hear about Tom? I said, what? He's a genius. He caught light inside a glass ball. He's going to light the world. Throughout our history as a species, the first person in any group that came up with the new idea was labeled by everybody else in the group as being stupid. If they persisted with that stupidity, we then called them crazy. And when the rest of us figured out, holy cow, it's a great idea, we then call them geniuses. Now, I want to say this out front very quickly. I believe that far more than 95% of the stupid, crazy people are, in fact, stupid and crazy. They're never going to be geniuses. That's just the way life is. But here's the problem. If we stop all the stupid, crazy people in the stupid, crazy phase, then we never get to see the geniuses. And that's why we have to protect the liberty of people to be free, to be stupid and crazy, because you never know which ones are going to allow us to sit in 3 different cities across this country and talk to each other on a glowing box. That's crazy. But we're doing it now. And that's why you got to understand something, and you probably know me well enough to do this. I firmly believe that it is totally impossible for a human being, including myself, to commit an unselfish act. And when people thank me for the work that I've done over the years with Leap and stuff like that, I always tell them, you don't need to thank me. All I was doing was satisfying my own selfish wants and needs. And if it happened to be that those things are going to be good for other people, I'm very happy that that's happening. But that wasn't my goal. It was to keep Petey happy. So,
well, one thing that keeps my creditors happy is when I write a check and send them money And the only way I can make that happen is if I take a commercial break and let our sponsors be heard. Please tell them that you heard about them here on the Broadcasting Network and that you yourself also really do enjoy taking time for hemp. You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Get your smoke on, everybody gather round. My connection came to town. He's got chronic, don't you know? He came straight from Mexico. Buy an eighth or buy an ounce, but here comes the 5-0, so you better bounce. Get your smoke on, get your smoke on. Light up a joint and make it fat. Get your smoke on. Don't tell my mama, I won't tell your daddy.
Yeah, baby, get your smoke on. One of my favorite tunes. I think it's groovy to sit and jam out to that and puff on a pipe and enjoy time with my friends on Time for Hemp. And if you enjoy this joint broadcast with me and our joint friends having a joint chat, please jointly share us with your joint friends. And when you do, make it a point to smoke a joint. And every time you hear the word joint, hit your joint and enjoy your life in the joint at Time for Hemp. I'm going to pass this joint chat now back to my joint host and our joint guest here in the big joint broadcast. Gentlemen, I'm looking forward to your joint conversation.
Thank you. Peter and I are glad to be back. Glad to be back. And
Absolutely.
Peter, it's funny that you say that about your activities of choice over many, many years. Politically, I have come out of the closet and openly talk about my general history because screw them, I get to now. And what I point to is my bio sheet, my achievements, and I can look someone in the eye and say, if that is failure, if smoking pot has caused that level of failure, I can live with it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
You mentioned some. Go ahead, please.
No, go ahead.
You mentioned something else that struck me as rather investigation-based. You mentioned that the involvement in a societal group, the giving and the taking away, and I'm sitting here and what I wrote down was Locard's principle.
Which is?
Do you remember Locard's principle?
No.
The first forensic investigator.
Okay.
Locard is the one who said, anytime somebody does something, they leave something and they take something away.
Yep.
And it sounds like that same principle applying to society. Why do we do what we do? Whenever I hear that, I think, well, on the one hand, I pay the rent, I pay the light bill by defending people on drug crimes so that I can go home and try to make it all legal.
Right.
What the hell? Shoot one foot so I can learn how to bandage? And the best answer I've come up with so far is very similar to what I have heard some painters say when asked, why do you paint? And their answer is, I have a choice. And I feel that way about the war on drugs. And I am on the same page with Peter as the bigger picture of prohibiting consensual adult behavior as being evil, wrong, and,
right.
Oh, by the way, can't be done. But we solved the problem in Colorado. Theoretically, we're working on the regulation end. And what are we doing? Did we go home and smoke joints and watch Captain Kangaroo? Well, maybe sometimes, but how many of us are out there in the rest of the country trying to help others get to at least where we are and better? We want them to learn from our mistakes. And we made enough of them, so there's a lot to learn.
You know, it's interesting when you mention learning from our mistakes, and I think that the gay issue, which, as we look at it from our point of view from the year 2015, we look back on the way we treated gays, and we are so embarrassed by it today that we don't even want to talk about it anymore. And what I mean by that is, let us never forget that until the year 2000, for the whole 20 years that I was on the police department from 1969 to 1989, it was illegal, not just, and I don't mean decriminalized, it was a crime, a Class A misdemeanor in New York State to be gay. It was against the law.
That's embarrassing.
The law was called the consensual sodomy law, and that law said that sodomy between two consenting adults was perfectly legal in New York State as long as those two people were married to each other. And of course, gay people could never be married to each other. So that meant that every time they had sex, they were committing a crime. This was a morality crime. This was not a mala and say crime. This is a prohibitum crime. This is a prohibiting of consensual adult behavior. And the fact is that we're not even remembering now that we did that in this country, even though some states still have those laws in effect. And that's what's at the root of this. People say to me, what's with this police? I came on the police department in 1969. By the way, when I joined the police department, I had to go to basic school that was run by the Erie County Sheriff's Department. And you know how long that school was for? 6 weeks. Now you can't get out of police department without at least 2 years of college, okay? So that's the training that we were given back then. But the senior officers, I remember this over and over again, hearing this from senior officers, that the strangest thing about this job is that every time you arrest somebody, you're arresting your boss. Because it was made very clear to me that I worked for the people. Now we have created an environment where cops come on the job and they feel like they are arresting the enemy. Not their boss, the enemy. And we've done that with like about 15 years of the nation being at war and being used to war tactics as ways of solving problems. Nixon called this a war on drugs, so we could start using that terminology in conjunction with our discussion. We are now sending cops on the streets of this country who are enforcing morality laws, which is telling them in their head that they are morally superior to the people that they are arresting. And we're shocked at the overuse of force that we're starting to see. Why does that shock us? Do we not understand the human species? Don't we understand what happens to people when they are given power over other people? And I always say that there's that old line that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I always felt like correcting the first line, because I think what power really does always is intoxicates. And that intoxication can or cannot, depending on the individual, lead to corruption, okay? But it is very intoxicating having power, particularly when it is constantly told that you have it, and that you're superior to these other people, and that we're at war. We need to take that out. You pull morality policing completely out of this system, and I'll tell you right now, 20 years from now, you will not recognize the police departments that we have in this country, because they will be working with the people. See, the problem with this kind of shit is when you take stuff that people want to do with each other and you make it illegal, and then you go out and you are investigating a real crime, a murder, a robbery, a rape, and you knock on somebody's door to see if they can give you some information. Well, if they're violating one of these morality laws, they got a little plant going in their back room, they don't want to answer the door. And they might even have some information to help you that they'd like to give you. But they're just afraid that you're going to end up arresting them, so they'd much rather. When the Boston Marathon bombing thing happened, and remember they went and they searched all those houses, illegally searched all those houses? You know what the interesting about that whole story was to me? I did not hear of one ancillary arrest that came from any of those searches. Not one. And I can't believe that those cops didn't walk into some of those houses they were searching and not see a pipe sitting someplace or this, but they were so on point and knowing what they were looking for that nobody made any ancillary arrests. They just went out and searched the next house looking for the bombers. That's what police should be doing all the time. And we put a wedge between them and the public by taking this kind of behavior and making it illegal.
Here's the kind of behavior that I have seen. I've seen it once. The police were chasing down a knife-wielding, insane person. They were going yard to yard, through backyards, over fences, and what they wanted to do was get the bad guy. My client had a shed in his backyard. the police looked in the shed, they found his backyard medical grow, not a legal backyard medical grow. Mm-hmm. They busted him. His attitude was, while of course I really wish I hadn't been busted, I know what they were trying to do, and it was more important that they search for this guy with the knife, right, including looking in my shed. Why should people be in that position? When an officer, when a law enforcement officer, when a uniform knocks at my front door, whose interest is it in for me to be thinking, oh man, did I leave a roach in an ashtray? Yep. As opposed to, officer, how's your night? How can I help?
Exactly.
But instead, we give them smoke grenades, flashbangs, armored cars. It's so out of control. It's hard to put words to. And now, should police have high-powered rifles because bad guys do also? Well, of course. Mm-hmm. But where do we draw the line at that militarization?
Well, that is the problem that we are creating and we're doing. I'll give you a perfect example. When I worked for the Town of Tonawanda Police Department, we were known as the old black and gray because we had gray T-shirts with black epaulets on them and black pants with gray stripes up the side. Now it's all black. And you look at almost every police department in this country, they've made that change. When you talk about high-powered weapons, yeah, there should be a couple of them there if they need it. They should have a trained SWAT team to come out and do it. But every cop on the street doesn't need a high-powered weapon. They don't need to be driving down the street in tanks, okay? And but it's all part of this. And then when I came out of the department in '69, I'm a Navy guy, but I'm a Vietnam era veteran. I'm not a Vietnam War veteran. I always make that clear because I had a couple friends of mine that didn't come back from that war, and I had some other friends of mine that came back messed up from that war. And for me to even suggest to somebody that I might have been there when I wasn't dishonors their pain and suffering. So I'm an era veteran. But we had Vietnam veterans in the early 70s who were coming out of the department after time in Vietnam. And our process was to retrain them. You're not in Vietnam anymore. This ain't a war for police officers. We had to go through that process. Now, you get guys come back from Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever, and they say, walking into work, they say, hey, I used to drive one of those in Afghanistan. I used to wear that kind of vest over here. It all looks the same, and it becomes hard for them to realize that it's different. And if you're in Vietnam and there's a kid or a guy, I don't care how old, running around with a knife in their hand, you know what you do? You kill them. And if you're in Afghanistan and there's somebody running around with a knife in their hand, you kill them. And if you're in the streets of Chicago and you're a cop, you don't shoot them 16 times, you take the knife away from them. That's police work.
Well, lately they've been killing them.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm not sure you...
And with that said, well, what's killing me...
You have me agreeing with you on that one.
What's killing me is my budget, and I got to keep that from killing me. So we're going to pay our bills, and we're going to wage a war on poverty by getting sponsors happy here at Time for Hemp.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
THCF Medical Clinics are the premier physicians clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, Call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
Yeah, baby, do stay alert. Be conscious of the world around you. Be respectful of those in your area. And remember that your freedoms stop and they begin to interfere with the freedoms of someone else. What you do behind your closed doors is your own business. And if you smoke marijuana or not, ain't nobody's business if you do. And we are having a joint chat with a judge and a former police officer. This is really interesting. The political aspects of arrest can also be looked at in the world news today, gentlemen. We were talking about policing before we went to commercial break, and I did mention that there's been an awful lot of killings going on by the forces in blue. I think only one state did not have a police officer killing a citizen in this last 12-month period.
My comment, Peter was suggesting that perhaps somebody with a knife might not benefit from some shooting, and I was suggesting that from my point of view, if somebody's 20 feet away coming in my direction with a knife, I think it's a no-brainer. If I'm armed, I shoot. That's my training, and Peter's perspective, I think, is different.
Well, yeah, well, that's because you are not being paid to be a professional police officer and do things differently. You are a citizen protecting yourself, and I would shoot too, okay? Let me tell you the difference between the military and the police. I know a lot of times it seems like the things that the police are involved in are the same stuff the military, and it becomes the same. And, man, people are shooting guns. Look at that thing that just happened out in San Bernardino. That's like a – here's the difference. If you're in the military and you're taking fire from a 15-unit apartment building over there on the hill, you know what you do? You either call an artillery or an airstrike and you blow the building up. And you call the other people that live in the building collateral damage because you're at war. If you're in the police department and you're taking fire from a 40-unit apartment building over there, you have two jobs. The first job is to protect everybody else in the building. And the second job is to get the person shooting at you. That's a very, very different job. We used to say in the town of Tonawanda, and I talk to cops from all over this country, and it was the same thing. When you take the job on the police department, you're making a bet with that community. And what they're saying is, you're going to have to take a bullet for one of our citizens, and you're saying, I bet you I could do that job for 20 years without having to do that, but I'll take the risk if I have to, okay? And that's what the professional policing is about. When Robert Peel started the policing that we talk about today in the world over in London, England, he made it very clear that they were not there to protect people from doing things to themselves. They were there to protect people from other people. And when I tell people at LEAP, and I think they're changing it, we used to define ourselves as LEAP as a drug policy reform organization, but I think they're in the process of changing it now to LEAP as a human rights organization. And the reason why I look at law enforcement as a human rights business is because that's what my job was for 20 years. I either protected people from other people violating their human rights, or with reasonable cause, I was empowered to take people's human rights away from them. I can, as an expert, tell you about human rights, not drugs. Drugs are terrible. Don't use them. But if you are a citizen in a free society, police shouldn't be there telling you who you should sleep with and what you should smoke. They should be there protecting you from other people doing you harm.
So that you can do what you want behind the privacy of your closed doors without interruption.
Exactly. That's what it should be. And again, that goes back to that stupid, crazy genius thing I was talking about. That's how we're going to get all the wonderful changes that come about, because people step outside if I could never understand the concept. I mean, I understand it, but it never made sense to me, of political conservatism. Because our species, if we were conservative from the caveman days, we'd still all be living in caves. Because we'd keep conserving, keep it the way it is, keep it the way it is, no new changes, keep it the way it is. And progressive is what you want to be. You want to be out there making changes, trying new things. Some of the new things we try are going to fail, but some of them are going to be able to. It amazes me that how long as a species we have been on this planet. And until the year 1900, just 115 years ago, pretty basically, we were moving across this planet and communicating across this planet the same way the cavemen were doing it. It wasn't just the last 150 years is when we started getting electricity and aeroplanes and landing on and can you imagine if we hadn't have had all that conservatism in 1200, that maybe we would have landed on the moon in 1700? Maybe we'd be a lot further along today than we are. And it's just, again, it's just me being an idiot, so excuse.
Flipping back to Thomas Edison, it's funny that you and I have both picked on him as an example in a different context. I was doing a presentation in New Jersey, specifically as they were working on their medical marijuana law. And the way that it was formulated, and I'm embarrassed to say Governor Christie somehow graduated from Livingston High School, where I graduated. I don't know how he graduated. It's a damn good school. Fantastic school. In any event, I was back in New Jersey. And at the time, New Jersey was looking at a medical law that permitted 3 strains. 3 strains of the 1,000. I've been begging my friends, would somebody please come out with Christie Chronic? Just do me this favor. I want Christie Chronic. So New Jersey had this 3-strain limit. I said, think about this. Tom Edison goes to the city council in Newark. Said, look, guys, I want to invent the light bulb. All right, Tom. Great. Wonderful. You should do that. All right, now here's the deal. It's tricky stuff, so every once in a while you'll hear a bit of a boom, a little explosion. Don't worry about it. Just part of the process. Oh, that's okay, Tom. We know. That's fine. And every once in a while, all the gases are going to go down and the town's going to go dark. Probably just a couple of days. Part of the process. Oh, don't worry, Tom. No worries. But listen, we've been talking, Tom. There's one thing that we have to tell you. When you are going through the list of things to try as filaments, you can only try 3 things. We don't care which 3. You can pick them. You can only try 3 things. And Tom said, well, that's a problem, because if you'd read the book, you would know that my method of science was to try every single substance I could possibly come up with. And oh, by the way, it will take me 10,000 attempts before coming up with this carbonized stuff that will really work. So I need to try 10,000 things. Nah, Tom, sorry. You're fine, but you can try 3. New Jersey got rid of the 3 shortly after that. I'd love to take a little bit of credit. So go, Tom. And I'm not even an Edison fan. I happen to be a Tesla fan.
Yep. It's it's again, it's our history as a species, and it's a group thing. and it's why I'm where I'm at now. And I want to thank you for doing this. I want to thank Casper again, as I have many times before, for having the show, because you're getting information out there that is priceless from many, many, many different people. You're giving a voice to this that wouldn't be heard if you weren't doing what you're doing. So thank you.
Peter, real quickly, you used two Latin terms, so we love Latin. You mentioned malum prohibitum and malum in se. Would you explain for our listeners who might not have run across that Latin what that means? It's important.
Okay, well, mala per se, mala prohibitum are two Latin terms that describe laws within society. Mala in se laws are crimes because they're crimes. I mean, if you and I are walking down the street and you see somebody run up behind somebody else and punch them in the back of the head, knock them to the ground, grab something away from them and run off, I don't have to explain to you, or you don't have to explain to me why that should be against the law. I mean, there's a victim, somebody's complaining, this person's yelling for the police. Those are mala in se crimes. Mala prohibitum crimes are crimes that are crimes because we in society decide that they should be illegal. They are acts between consenting adults that those people want to do with each other, but the rest of us think that it's harmful in some ways to society to have that activity going on, so we make it against the law. So now we're walking down the street and we see this guy standing on a street corner. A guy walks up to him and smiles at him. They shake hands. He hands the guy some money. The guy hands the guy an envelope, and the guy walks away. And I say to you, that's against the law. You're looking at me and saying, why? I don't see a victim there. Everybody was happy, but because what was in that envelope and Here's the problem. If you're going to have mala prohibitum laws in your society, they are based on morality. And the thing about morality is everybody has their own interpretation of morality. If you look at the Catholic Church's interpretation of morality, it's one thing. If you look at the Protestant churches, they have very different ones. Different churches have different interpretations. Islam has a different interpretation. Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, they all have their own interpretations of morality. So the thing I say to people is if you're going to make morality illegal in your society, if you're going to have mala prohibitum laws, here's the question you have to ask yourself first. Whose morality are we going to choose? Are we going to choose the Catholic Church morality? And if we're going to use that as an example, let's say it's immoral for women to run anything because women can't be priests, so that's obviously wrong. Or are we going to choose the Islam form or the Baptist church? Which one are we going to pick and say everybody has to live by this? And then I always end that by saying, and before you answer me, read the First Amendment just one more time, because it says something in there about making laws establishing religion. If you do not have a clear, defined victim, it should not be a law enforcement problem.
Well,
morality, real quick, morality is a function of family, church, education, and the healthcare system, not the criminal justice system.
One law I have to live within is the law of time. I cannot fight Father Time, no matter how hard I try. I lose. We are at the end of the hour. Quickly, gentlemen, a big shout out for your favorite URL or organization, Peter.
Leap.cc. Just Google the word LEAP. It'll get you all the information you need about this subject.
And Your Honor?
Instead of Jews for Jesus, a fine group, I want to start a new one, Jews for Bacon.
I would like. And I want to start a great group called Jews for Cannabis. And if you're listening out there, remember to share us with your friends, because the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network is like a good joint. It's always best when you share it.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spend. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes.
Get up, get up, get up, get moving. life is what you make it. A lot of us will try to fake it, so everyone's just bumping around, trying to find a shortcut to it. Sit and watch the years blow by, since you decided not to try anything that you had planned, because you didn't want to fail at it. I've been afraid to connect, living my life in regret. Tell me why, oh, why do we wait? If you sing your freedom, the song will get you through. If you sing your freedom, freedom will come to you. Sing your freedom, sing your freedom, sing your freedom, sing your song of freedom. Get up, get up, get up, get moving. Get up, don't give up. Get up, get moving. For any dream inside of anyone, there's someone to say it can't be done. In a million voices I can hear you cry. It's your dream, hold on to it. I've been afraid to connect, living my life in regret. Tell me why, oh, why do we wait? If you sing your freedom, the song will get you through. If you sing your freedom, freedom will come to you. Sing your freedom, sing your freedom, sing your freedom, sing your song of freedom. When you're down in the mud, sing your freedom. Lord, covered in blood, sing your freedom. Nobody to complain. Your freedom, nowhere. Your freedom.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network, the only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio. Please share us with your friends.